I need to do something that you guys will appreciate. I'm
Okay.
on the
We appreciate it.
East Lake page, and I'm going to do a story with my camera with you guys. And
Okay.
I am filming right now the podcast with Ray and Michelle. And we are here to tell you that we are doing Summerama Rain or Shine tonight.
That's
Rain
right.
or shine.
Did you guys see that?
It's happening.
Yeah.
Yep.
It don't matter.
Laura told us, she said, can you do a post saying rain or shine, Summerama is happening? Well,
And it is.
you're here on the
Here's
podcast
that.
hearing it. It's happening. All right, now I got to post this. Welcome to Second Take at East Lake, a podcast of East Lake Community Church in Irmo, South Carolina. You are invited to join us any Sunday at 9 or 11.
Okay.
We're just multitasking, guys.
Okay.
Well, by the time we're
I've
done
gotta
with the
get-
podcast, it'll be too late. We need to get the word out right now.
All
Right.
right.
And I just saw the text. Guys,
And
this
now
is what,
Michelle is leaving. She's
Well,
leaving.
I can't get the silly light to be right today.
Well,
Glasses
one-
are a challenge.
well, wait. I got a solution for you.
What?
So you're at your table, right?
Yeah.
Take it and turn it so that you're facing the window.
Well, I have the window on one side.
so
Right.
you want a window on one side so you have lighting from one angle. It makes you look glowy.
Well, Philip told me that good lighting is always more on one side.
That's
Remember
true.
telling me that, Philip?
If you'll notice,
Okay.
if you'll notice, my noggin has more light on one side than the other.
Yeah.
That is the secret. That's how you frame a great camera shot.
Okay.
Except for I
so-
just sat down at my kitchen table and just so
It
happened.
bright- that,
the
see, that
window.
brightens your face.
Yeah, it just so
brightens
happens
my
that I'm next to a
face.
window.
Okay, and it's
Yeah.
still more on one side than the other, which
That's
is
good.
what Philip
You
said
want-
is the correct
Yeah, you-
thing to do.
You want to be lopsided.
My background's not so great. I've got stuff like
Yeah,
Yeah.
your background's very corporate. It's like the only thing worse would be a hospital.
well, I'd love to decorate this office.
But why do that when you're going to have another one?
Well, you got that, but I mean, it could be a while till I have another office.
Could be a long
This is
while.
true.
You never know.
My
All right,
dad
guys.
had a really cool art piece of Pittsburgh that I almost kept to have if I ever had an office, but it was too big to hold on to. So I let it go.
Just so you know, there's millions of people out there that are like, I don't want an office. Don't make me come in anymore. Have you heard all these people? They're like, nobody wants to go to the office anymore. I have all these people I've met. They're like, I have to go into the office one day a week.
Well, we kind of have people we have to meet with. So unless you want them all coming to your house,
Yep. True. There you go.
an office is a good thing.
Michelle said it. You heard it from her mouth. She doesn't want you at her house, people.
Now we know that's not true. I had people there Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night last week. Come on now.
Just trying to throw
Pastor
you under the
Michelle's
bus.
house, aka Animal House.
Yeah.
Animal.
Yeah, Michelle's house is the party house for sure. Yeah. If you come to my house, we'll put you to work on some project.
That's
You gotta
right.
be
Yeah.
careful. You gotta be careful. Yeah, I have friends coming over tonight, and I think they're gonna help me lay in some poles, concrete some poles in.
Some concrete, some poles
Yep. Just
for
another
your new
Wednesday
deck
night.
in front of your Airstream.
That's right. That's what we're
Mhm.
gonna do. It's wild over here. Anyways, guys, welcome to the podcast. This podcast has at least 1 million views, minus maybe like 990,000. We're glad you tuned in, and we hope you feel special because you are. And this is fun. This is where we basically just kind of unpack what our church is learning and growing in. which usually comes through the sermon series, which right now is called Suffering Through the Summer. It's just now getting hot outside, by the way. It's officially.
It was hot yesterday.
I just walked out and I was like, okay, I think I'm sweating for the first time. Ray's been sweating since Christmas, but I just got started. So, yep, we're in Suffering Through the Summer, and we're doing the book along with it. Some people are called Suffering by Paul Tripp. I like to say T-Rip. Paul Tripp is just a great author too, if you're wondering and wanting some good books. And
he's a CIU alumni.
Yep, he is. I just got quiet because Alexa heard me. Alexa, turn off. She just heard me say that, I won't say it again, but the author's name and all that stuff. And it started giving me like a whole rundown on said author, of which I cannot say his name again or she'll get started up again. He was given a whole biography. No, my gosh. She's our house helper. Yep. Okay, so let's go through some stuff. Michelle taught this Sunday, which is kind of fun. I think we can kind of discuss a little bit of this because the Southern Baptist Convention's voting on whether or not they're going to let women preach, and Eastlake just let Michelle preach. I can't believe we didn't have to have somebody standing by your side to make sure you didn't do anything unholy.
Well, you were supposed to bring an umbrella to hold over my head, but you didn't. Oh yeah,
the umbrella of grace.
Yeah.
Man.
Covering.
Anyways, Michelle taught. She did great, and it was fun to get to hear her. And this was the second one, and it was called The Awareness Trap.
Yep.
Why is it called The Awareness Trap? What does that have to do with suffering?
I don't know. I actually think it should have been called The Unawareness Trap, because the whole thing was about you need to be aware that there is spiritual warfare going on. And personally, I think it's when you're unaware of that you get trapped. So when you're aware, then you're less likely to be trapped. But, you know, said author did not consult me about the chapter titles.
Yeah, let's talk to him. Next time I'm on the phone with him.
You know what? Just that quickly, when you explained it, Michelle, I think I know why he called it The Awareness Trap.
Oh, okay.
I have a real life example, and Philip will be able to connect with this.
Okay, tell us.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had an air conditioning people come out to service my air conditioner. And when he went over to service said unit, when he came in to give us the report, he said, "Hey, I think you need to know, by the way, you have a pretty large snake by your air conditioning unit. And guess what? Now that I'm aware of that, guess where I won't go?" So the awareness trap. Had I not known, I might have been trapped with a heart attack looking at my air conditioning unit. But because now that I know, guess where I'm not going? Because I'm aware.
Yeah.
Oh, Ray, you got a huge snake in your yard too?
I need Kristen. Kristen, help.
Dude, did he say what kind it was?
He did not. I think it's a black snake. But guess what? Because I'm aware, I'm not going out to have a conversation with him. No. Eve had a conversation with a snake, and we still digging ourselves out of that hole. I'm not going out to try to console with an inconsolable creature.
Okay.
Yeah, man. That's funny. That's where my snake lives. He's about 8 to 10 feet long, and he lives under one of the air conditioning units.
Really?
Yeah, and I know because I saw him the other day and I spied on him, and then he disappeared under the air conditioner. Just there he goes. I got a video of it. I didn't post it because just no need. But yeah, Ray, we got problems. You gonna go out there with some mothballs?
You know, I have a fresh supply of them and I really want to, but somebody shamed me about, putting them out there and scaring them away. Right. I don't know what I'm gonna do. They said they're not biodegradable and
Oh,
it hurts the ecosystem. And the snake then has to run someplace else. And I'm like, okay, he's
okay.
not in my yard.
You could get
Man.
that snake away, the granules.
Does that work though?
Well, it smells just like mothballs,
Okay.
but I think the jury's out on whether or not any of it works, because you can always find pictures posted of snakes laying on top of mothballs or on top of the snake away.
That's not what happened when I learned about them slithering off of our roof. I put them mothballs out and them things went running. Well, slithering.
Slithering, yeah, not running.
Oh, I think Kristen, you need to get Kristen over there for snake removal services.
Yeah, come and video it.
I'll put it on
We'll have
TikTok.
a viral video.
Our videos are like 700,000 likes or something like that right now of Kristen getting rid of that snake. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
We should
Actually-
put it out there again so that maybe you can hit 1 million, you know?
Yeah, that's what we'll do. Man, that's crazy. All right, so the awareness trap, back to the sermon, is really this awareness of what's going on. So when you come against suffering, which is what we're talking about, when you come against suffering, the awareness of where it comes from, that there are forces at B that are causing these things in your life, and it, and awareness will help keep you from being shocked. Is that safe to say, Michelle?
Yeah.
And more on the defense. And we can never stop suffering. It is a part of this life, but you can learn how to handle it well. You can learn how to suffer well. So that's kind of the goal. So one of the things that we ask just the other day, actually, that I thought this would be good for our listeners and for us to discuss is, what are we doing with this message? So so Michelle preached, she brought the heat, she came down, all of you decided you were going to quit whatever habits you had. Everybody's getting baptized for the 10th time after she finished her sermon. But no, in real talk, what are we doing with the sermon? So how do you guys take Sunday and walk with it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? How does that play out in your life?
I personally think that I used to think that when I was not suffering, when everything was going well, when everyone was happy, that was like normal life. And then I would get upset when things went wrong and when there was suffering. And so not only was I suffering, but then I was upset that I was suffering. So that compounds the problem. So to just get into reality that, you know what, life is going to be full of suffering, little bits to great big bits. I mean, like this week, I was supposed to have dirt put in my gardens on Monday. It didn't happen. I thought they weren't coming this week. And then last night I got a call, oh, they're coming tomorrow. I mean, it's just inconvenient, all those kinds of things. That's a little bit of a problem to great big things. And if we just can learn to understand that it's part of life, then at least we don't have to be upset about it.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Michelle. So you just kind of have an awareness of it throughout the week, and it helps you to adapt and recognize it when you see it. That's awesome.
Yep.
Ray, what do you do with the sermon? Do you listen to the sermons?
Of course I listen to the sermon. When she's preaching, I was running the online church.
I know. I only say that because nobody takes notes like Ray. If there was an award for listening to a sermon, Ray would have it. I mean, that guy is typing everything, typing notes. If I was a teacher, I would want Ray in my class. I don't know that I want me, but I would definitely want Ray.
Well, okay, Philip. So 2 things about the message. Michelle did a masterful job telling the story of Job, which I would like to add. I don't believe Job was aware that what he was going through had this huge spiritual moment that was going on within it. He didn't know about Satan and God having a conversation. Mm-hmm. And so, now that we realize that there are forces at play, they may not always be the causes of the suffering. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to hyper spiritualize it and say that everything is because Satan is on us. But we do need to consider for a moment, whatever it is that we're encountering, that God has a desire in it, and so does our adversary has a desire in it. Our adversary wants us to move away from God. And so therefore, that should give all of us, when we are suffering, and this is what I got from it, we need to consider for a moment what is at play and what's at stake. We have children, and we see children around, and they sometimes have what we call a fit, where they're not getting their way. And so as adults, we don't see people falling out in Walmart and kicking and screaming because they can't get what they want. And if we did, we would want some guys dressed in all white to come and take them away and put them in a nice padded room. But because we can't do that, we have to ask ourselves, what's at stake? What's at stake when the person cuts you off in traffic, when you want to lay into the horn, or even worse? What's at stake? What is the kingdom of darkness calling you to do? And what is God trying to minister to you in the moment to do? And so for me, she said it, I have to guard my heart. And what helps me guard my heart is what I'm putting into my head way before the moment even comes. Because I've witnessed firsthand. I was sitting at work with my headphones on, listening to some trap music. And then when my boss called me into the office to tell me or to give me my performance review because of the trap music that I was just listening to, and the review wasn't as good as I would have liked it to be, guess what I'm thinking about? My boss. Not good things. Because I've just deposited a whole lot of other things in my head that was like, I'm going to get her. And it's like, no, you're not. So, guarding my heart.
That's good, man. Yeah, I think I'm just trying to be on the awareness theme, just aware of the things going on, and when I'm making decisions, okay, how could Satan try to use this? How could God honor this? And just kind of having an awareness. And for instance, let's say I'm at a dinner with somebody sitting there. Satan can use that dinner, to manipulate. Like it can end up being a negative thing, or it can end up being a positive thing that's honoring God. And so like let's take dinner out of it, just a conversation. You find yourself in a conversation with somebody. How can Satan guide that conversation versus how can God guide that conversation? Work day, commute. I gotta say though, I gotta throw some props out. I won't use their name just in case, but even though it's a positive thing, I saw somebody from our church this morning get honked at, like a full on, like somebody laid into him and honked at him.
Boy.
And I was like, ooh. And then they were coming through the coffee drive-through, and I was like, how are they going to handle this? And I was thinking, I'm going to help them calm down. Like, it's all right. And then Kristen, right before they came up, she goes, just don't even bring it up. Maybe they've moved on. And I didn't bring it up, and the person had just moved on, and like life was good. And I was like, good for you guys, shock absorber. So, and I think the person honking wasn't even in the right. I don't understand what the problem was, but anyways, it's just kind of funny. Life throws so many things. I'm with Michelle, small things and really big things. And that awareness of it. Okay, so this is a question from the book. I don't know if you guys knew there's questions in the book. So I did the audio book, just so you guys know, if you're an audiobook listener on a commute, you can get this one on where they read to you. It's very gentle and soothing. But if you buy the actual book, there are questions at the end of the chapter. And this one was in there and I liked it. How can suffering be a workroom for grace? How can suffering be a workroom for grace? How about that one?
Suffering always presents those going through it with options. One of those options is waiting. And if you learn how to wait well, you can actually grow in grace. For instance, so we all lived through 2020, 2021, and 2022. And what we began to see and experience, all of us, if you're a small business owner, you're having trouble finding workers, not work, workers. And so that is complicated by some people wanting to be paid more. And so they're refusing to work for said companies. And as a business owner, you're doing everything you can to stay open. You have employees, they have families, and everybody's just trying to make it. That's what, this is not get rich. We're trying to make it. Mm-hmm. And so me, the customer, comes in with my friend Philip, who loves chicken wings. And so we order a few. If Philip and I understand the complexities of what a small business is going through right now, we can also understand that waiting for our food can take some time. And if we leverage the time that it takes them to deliver our food with just having productive conversations, we can actually strategize ways in which we can actually bless said restaurant instead of getting upset because it took them 30 minutes. We don't know what's going on back in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. We don't know those people's stories. We don't know what it took for them to get to work. Mm-hmm. We don't know if it's the owner actually back there working. Mm-hmm. So rather than write your bad review or rag on the server, ask the question when they come to give you your drinks, is there anything that I can be in prayer about for you guys today?
Yeah.
That's growing in grace. Mm-hmm. Because if they tell you we're working short staff, there it is. Mm-hmm. You have lots to pray about, and even to pray about yourself in your attitude about having to wait.
Yeah.
So repeat the question again, Philip.
How can suffering be a workroom for grace? Like how can suffering basically bring about grace?
I was thinking of something, but I wanted to hear the exact way you worded that. I think that's true. What Ray was talking about, how we respond in a situation. I think a different way it can grow grace is that sometimes we don't understand another person's perspective because we haven't walked through what they have. And so one of the things that happened in one of the people that I talked to this past week that told me a story, they were talking about a person who wrote a book on grief, not suffering, on grief. And that this person had counseled lots of people and had counseled lots of people who had lost children. And the guy that authored the book then lost his son. And he, as a counselor, went back and revisited with all those families, not because he had done them wrong, because he was supportive and loving and kind, but because he said he had come into a new awareness or understanding of how bad that pain was. And he just wanted to revisit them and offer them some grace and encouragement, because now, even though he cared about their grief, even though he was a counselor with lots of empathy and wanted to help them, his experience that was similar to theirs caused him to have a whole new level of understanding, which then allowed him to provide grace differently.
That's good.
I like that.
Yeah, I one of the things that's been interesting the older I get is that people frustrate me a lot.
No. No, say it isn't so.
Michelle, I don't want to be a cranky old man. I don't want to be one. I don't want to be one. I don't want to be one at all. But it's interesting, the older you get, the more like people's actions really will frustrate you, because you're kind of like, what? And maybe it's that you've lived more life and the the decisions somebody makes don't make sense or whatever, but it's really hard. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, and this goes along with grace, is like, what are our similarities more than what are our differences? When somebody's frustrating me, and it can be all the way down to we both need to eat, sleep, like what are our similar? This is just another person in front of me. These are our similarities. And then the other piece of like grace for me is to say, okay, maybe they haven't grown up. I mean, I've been really blessed to have a lot of healthy experiences in my life. I mean, not all have been healthy, but the healthy experiences have really taught me a lot of things. And maybe this person hasn't, had healthy upbringing or had parents around or had strong mentors or, and so they're frustrating me, but maybe they've lived a life of suffering that's different, and where they suffer is not where I suffer. And so trying to just see people where they're at, I'm working on that. And then to try to meet people in their suffering, not that I have to take on their suffering, but to meet them there and see them in that suffering. That's helping me as far as grace goes. Now, for me, with the suffering that I have, I don't know, man. I just don't ever feel worthy to even say I suffer. And maybe that's maybe that's another depth of problems, but like, I don't let myself see my life as suffering, even though I'm sure I do. I don't give time to it, but yeah, I don't know that I just thought that was a good question. That was different. You know what else is funny is sometimes the people that are difficult to me, they're just like me.
That tends to be true of us.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it is. Like you look at your kids and you realize that thing they're doing that you just want to kill them for, and you go, oh, that is exactly me.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, that kid's being me. Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Mandy will leave the house sometimes and she's in her whole teenage, like gothic, like combat boots. And like, I'm like, Mandy, you're the sweetest little angel on earth. What are you doing? You look like are you like in a metal band? And then I was like, that's the way I looked when I was her age.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Somebody, we're calling in help. We're going to call in an army to raise my kids for me. It's funny though. I mean, so yeah, suffering, grace, man, there's always, always, always room for grace. As soon as you find yourself on your edge, just ask yourself, is there room for grace in this situation? And you'll probably be like, well, poop. There's a lot of grace needed here. And I'm going to give it. And then you'll usually feel better because you did.
Yep.
My dog is killing me.
Your dog.
You have grace for my dogs too. Here's another good question I love from the book. We still have time. So talking about suffering, this was a question from the book. What are the implications of a suffering savior? Like, what does that mean that we had a savior who suffered as well? I don't want to describe it anymore because I want to let you guys take it and run with it the way you read that. But what are the implications of a suffering savior?
Ladies first.
Okay.
Oh, on voting day.
A suffering savior is somebody that can relate to me in my suffering. And sometimes as a woman, that has been harder, especially in my younger years, because Jesus is a man and I'm a woman. But as I've grown, I realize how much of our suffering is just the same across gender barriers. And Jesus suffered as a son in friendships. He suffered physically and emotionally. I mean, so all the different ways, and he can understand my pain.
Yeah.
I'd say the implications are really no excuses. Whatever pain we might be going through, we can't say that we can't go to Jesus, that he doesn't get it. He does. Even though he's never born a child, remember, he is God. And so God has lost far many children than Job ever could have imagined.
Yeah.
when you consider the amount of pain that he endures every day as he watches us doubt what he says about us, attempt to change things about us that he says, no, you're fine. Listening to other people and not him. I mean, even as a parent, you want to know what grieves me is when my kids are in pain that they don't have to be in.
Yeah.
And so if God is the creator of all, so for an African American, we talk about these things called microaggressions, which are like these supposed to be like little cuts. Can you imagine God having 7 billion micro cuts that we cause? And yet he still loves us and is faithful to us. Yeah, the implications are that we have no reason why we cannot go to Jesus with whatever it is that we're going through.
Yeah, and 7 billion times every generation too. All the sin of the world. Yeah, I think for me, just because I grew up in the nobody meant to do this, but it was kind of spoken as if when you start to follow Jesus, your suffering goes away. Like, I don't think the people who taught me growing up meant to come across like that, because they knew suffering was a part of life. But we were very much on a bandwagon to win people to Jesus. And so that was a great way to do it. So not trying to knock everybody, but I grew up receiving, at least that's the way I interpreted the information that was presented. And whenever I look at Jesus, I think, even he didn't escape suffering. I mean, everybody, and I think that it even breaks God's heart. I don't really understand how it would all work, but I think that God in heaven is broken over the sin of the world, or he wouldn't have sent his son, so there's got to be some suffering in some way theologically. I don't know how that works out. Don't ask me. Could be way off, but I at least ask the question of, like, there has to be a little bit of pain on God's heart for what goes on in the world, So yeah, I think the implications are crazy. I think that it's all over the place. So and once again, like, to circle it all back, it goes back to the awareness that it exists. It will always exist, and it's a part of life. So what, are you going to say something, Michelle? You kind of had a look like.
Well, yeah, just listening to you talk, I think that sometimes when we talk about the peace that comes from Christ and that God has a better plan for your life, like, all those things are true, but it does give the impression like, okay, I'm going to become a believer and it's going to fix all these things. And while it does fix some things, it doesn't make life easy. And I think that's part of the importance of us being willing to talk about this, is because if we don't talk about how suffering is part of our everyday life, then sometimes people who come to Christ, they feel really disappointed and like they've been sold a bill of goods, because they think, oh, Jesus has a good plan for my life and he's going to heal my sins and my hurts, and then everything's going to be perfect. And that's not true. So this series brings a counterbalance into that discussion.
Yeah. I like how you started the message with Job. And so everybody listening in, because it's true, Michelle has that radio soothing, motherly voice that you could just get some covers and let her have a book and let her read to you. But she started off with telling the story of Job. And here's Job, a man just like the rest of humanity that endured intense loss. So if you would, here's Job, the standard. This is how we all should endure through suffering. And then she sandwiched it at the end with the Chosen clip, where here you have two men, disciples of Christ, who are wrestling with their own suffering, their pain, and disappointment. And I love Andrew's response to Peter when Peter says, life was so much better. Or he said, life was easier when we were just fishing. How many times have we thought to ourselves that life was easier before Christ? We didn't have rules that people were hanging over our head. We could just do what we want to do. And what Andrew says to him after he says it was easier when we were just fishing, he said, Peter, you could have lost your baby even while being just a fisherman. The difference is now you have somebody you can go to. Before you didn't.
Yeah.
When we think about our BC life before Christ, where do we go when we were suffering? Because we all had a go-to, whether it was a tub of ice cream, whether it was a drug of choice, or a bottle, or your favorite bottle of wine, or your friends who would love to drink that bottle of wine. We all had a thing. But after Christ, the hope is, just like Job, he went to God with his pain. He went to God with his suffering. And the beauty that these two disciples who were following Jesus, we get to see that they're still learning that lesson. And so are we.
Yep, totally. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, you hit it on the head. That was a really good clip, by the way. Really good. If you guys haven't watched The Chosen, you should definitely watch that. Is it? Somebody told me that was getting picked up by like one of the networks.
Lionsgate has picked it up, and now I believe it. I don't know if it's going to be this fall, but I know it's soon. That all three seasons are going to be available on the CW station.
That's what it was. Yeah, the CW. And I'm so glad whenever people do a good job on stuff like that. It's like Christian stuff, but it's good, because sometimes it's Christian and it's a little hokey, but this is good. This is real good. Yeah. We have time for one more question. You guys want to hit it?
Okay.
Let's do it. Do you have the energy? Do you have the wisdom within your soul? Okay. This was actually a question that I think Michelle said we should discuss today. And it's this: spiritual warfare is not something we often talk about. Why is that? Why do we not talk about that very much? Was that your question, Michelle?
Yeah.
Or did you ask it better?
No, I just think I said, I don't know if I asked it as a question, but I said that it's an opportunity to talk about it because we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're afraid. It sounds spooky. We're afraid of the enemy, as if, he can do something to us. And so if we don't know about it, then we can ignore it. But the truth is the enemy is real. And that was part of the whole premise of this chapter, was that if you don't understand that in your suffering, the enemy's playing a part and he really wants to do damage to you in the middle of it, then, that's where you fall into the trap.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Ray has a great story about being, I think, in Africa and in spiritual warfare.
Yeah. This was our second trip to Africa in Katsakera. And we get to the top of the mountain where most of these people live. And one of the villagers comes to me in Malawi, in Katsakera. The language is Chichewa. It's their mother tongue. It's not a national language, but the indigenous people there speak it. And they call a pastor a busa. So Bussa. And so they came to me and busare, busare. The witch doctors, they not like you. And I said, excuse me? And they said, the witch doctors up on the mountain, they don't like you. And I said, how do you know this? Why do you know this? And they said, because of the Spirit of Christ in you. When you come, they run. And I was like, what? Wait, what? And they said, no, because of Christ in you, they want nothing to do with you. They run the other direction. And I remember them asking, and this was the time that we preached the gospel message to them, because we didn't do that the first time we came to their village. But it was this particular time that we would. And they wanted to accept Jesus. And so we had this space where, yeah, they would accept him, but we wanted to have a conversation with them to help them understand, what does this mean? And some of the most repeated questions was, what will this do to the witch doctors who terrorize us? And they said, well, we have the same spirit in us that you have. Ooh. And I said, absolutely, you will. Wow. And for them, if you could have seen the peace that came over their bodies, because Malawians they're scared of three things: witches, spiders, and wars. Malawi still to this day is the only country on the continent of Africa that has never seen a war. So they've always seen war from a distance, and they don't want that for themselves. They are very, very, very peaceful people. And so wars terrify them. But the witch doctors that stay on the mountain also terrify them. And I can tell you, we visited them at least 4 more times after that. And guess who we didn't hear about? The witch doctors.
Yep. That's crazy. I think it's good to talk about spiritual warfare because you have to know who your enemy is. I haven't been to Africa, but I've been a part of a couple things that were failing, that were just struggling. I've been a part of churches that were falling apart, just wild stuff. And one of the interesting things is that when Satan's attacking, people's tendency is to point to each other. It's like, oh, it's Michelle's fault. It's because it's because this, or you know what? Well, and then there's another group of people that points the finger and says, well, it's Ray's fault. If Ray would just stop, blah, 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 blah. If Philip would just stop doing that. And everybody when the ship is sinking, people start pointing at each other to point the blame. And I think if there was an awareness of spiritual warfare, maybe there would be more unity among the people, unity against the actual enemy, and maybe the ship is sinking and God has a plan for the ship and to let it sink or whatever and rebuild. But the enemy is usually not each other unless, they're just being used by, but I would say 9 times out of 10, it's not the other person. It's Satan, and it's Satan working through deception, through hate, through frustration, through lack of sleep, through confusion. Yep. I don't know, but I've noticed that a couple times in my life when the ship starts to sink, whose fault is it? And nobody ever says Satan. But usually
that's
is.
True. Yeah, it usually is him, and that's true of Job's friends too. They were looking to find the source of the problem. It's got to be Job. It's got to be his kids. He's not being truthful, always trying. And meanwhile, we got the peek into the heavenly conversation where we knew that the enemy was scheming against Job. Yep. But they didn't see that and they didn't consider it.
Yep. It's wild. So that's why it's important. This is so good. This is a great conversation because it's a part of life. It is a fact of life. You can't get, Jesus didn't get away or get around it. Like it is a part of life. Jesus even went through it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yep. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. Summerama will have already happened by the time this airs, but yep, Summerama is happening, rain or shine. Honestly, probably more fun in the rain if I was a kid. They're wearing swimming clothes anyways. You might as well let it rain, baby. Let's go. Cool everything off. Yeah, so that's the deal. Any other things you guys want to talk about? Announcements or anything?
Eastlake was invited to be a part of the Juneteenth celebration at Irmo Park next week at 6:30, I believe. And so come by and stop by our tent. Philip is going to have some lemonade and iced tea and stuff there, and we're just going to be there handing out information about our church because that's what the mayor asked us to do. He thinks that we are a pretty cool church. He said, I want more people to know about you guys. So he offered us a booth to come and celebrate Juneteenth with our amazing little town. So if you're interested in being a part of that, maybe you want to sit at the table for a couple of hours just to hand out our brochures to tell people about your church, give us a call or send us an email.
Yep. I love that.
That's cool.
Juneteenth.
Oh, we were recommended. Tell them about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to go on Best of Columbia. So if you Google Best of Columbia, vote, probably those words, you will pull up the Best of Columbia nomination thing. And Eastlake was nominated as Best House of Worship. Kind of crazy. So, and it's kind of hard to find because where do you put a church in all the categories? Because there's like food, hotels, and blah, blah, blah. We're under services. So if you look under the category of services, you'll find Best House of Worship and vote for Eastlake. How fun would that be? Not that we're competing against other churches, but it's still pretty cool. So it's cool
nice
to be
recognized.
Yeah, I think we're in like the top 6 or something like that. So that's a big deal. And what's funny to me too is that we are very different than the other churches. So there's like all these kind of traditional churches, and then there's this Eastlake bunch of rebels.
It's bestofcolumbia.com.
Bestofcolumbia.com. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Go on and vote. All right, guys. So we will sign off and see you next Wednesday or Sunday, or who knows.
See you Sunday.
See ya.
Bye.
Eastlake Community Church is an intentional, multicultural community empowered by the Holy Spirit. We passionately pursue a loving relationship with God and everyone Jesus was sent to die for, here, near, and far. Yeah, maybe Ray, you could test your microphone doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air rap.
Oh, wait.
How does it go? What does it start?
All right.
It's gonna lay
so
down.
You want the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. All right.
That mic does sound good.
Now, this is the story about how my life got flipped upside down. I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there so I can tell you how I came about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground where I spent most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and all the shooting came, some b-ball outside the school. When I was a couple of guys who were up to no good, started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight, and my mom got scared and said, "You're gonna move with your auntie and uncle in Bel-Air." I begged and I pleaded with her one day, but she packed up my suitcase and sent me on my way. She gave me a kiss and then gave me a ticket. I put my Walkman on and I said, I might as well kick it.
Oh, he's not doing the theme song. He's doing the solo, the release, the single release.
Oh yeah, Ray just went to another level.